Auden, why are you naked? Oh, this? I thought it was just the only way to be fair to the monsters, really. What, you mean you're too strong? I definitely... You need less armor skills because your own physical skills are strong enough? Well, what I was going to say is that it's not fair to hide this gorgeous body from them all the time. I've ordered you a baggy bodysuit, and you will wear it or you're fired. And at least have nice skills on it. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, sometimes the things that have the largest effect on our gameplay experience can be so tiny in presence. Something as small as one specific item you bring on every single hunt, or a skill that completely redefines what your build is and what it can do. But with nearly 100 separate skills in the game, it can be a little hard to nail down which skills these are. So today, my outstanding little orchids, I'll be sharing with you my list of the top 5 skills in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, with the caveat, as usual, being that this isn't a definitive statistical list so much as my opinion of the skills, what I think is a combination of the most interesting and effective, what is the cornerstone of interesting builds, or simply the cornerstone of my Iceborne experience as a whole, and of course contributed to my general enjoyment of the expansion. That's right, today it's all about me.
You have no power here.
Though hopefully my experience lines up relatively well with the experience of all of you guys, and if it doesn't, I'm sure you'll yell at me about it later. So without further ado, let's begin with...
Honorable mention, health boost.
Okay, this one had to be in here somewhere. I really don't know how to even talk about it for that long, but come on, it's health boost. I would argue that this is literally the singular most important skill to enjoying the end game of Iceborne. Tempered monsters, especially tempered elder dragons, hit like an absolute freight train, and health boost is often the only thing standing there protecting you from getting one shot by one powerful ability after another. As long as you keep yourself at your max health, with health boost, you'll live. So simply on a level of, I'm enjoying the game while I'm fighting the monster, I don't enjoy dying, health boost absolutely has to be mentioned somewhere around here for increasing the time that I get to spend enjoying myself, simply a measurable amount. That said, it isn't the most exciting thing in the world, and while it is particularly effective, it doesn't really take advantage of anything Iceborne specific or result in unique situations other than, well, living, if you could call that unique. So while I felt that it was important to mention health boost, I also felt that it wasn't quite deserving of a place on the list proper, which starts with...
Number 5. Agitator.
Now, this one has been beaten to death in terms of explaining why it's so damn good in Iceborne, so let's get over that part quickly. One of the main new Iceborne mechanics is the Clutch Claw, and one of the functions of said claw is a flinch shot to fire the monster into a wall for a massive chunk of damage and a downed period for even more free damage.
I think I'm gonna go stare at a wall for a while and rethink everything.
This can only be done when the monster isn't enraged, and the majority of the time doing this will result in the monster becoming enraged. Now, circling back to the skill Agitator, it activates whenever the monster you are fighting is enraged. The actual bonus it grants attack-wise is greater than straight-up attack boost, and then it also gives you affinity as a nice little cherry on top. And in Iceborne, it is active just the majority of the hunt. Like compared to base Monster Hunter World or even old world games, if you are playing normally, monsters are just enraged such a massive amount more in Iceborne, which means that this skill at this moment has more value than this equivalent skill Spirit did in the old games, and far more value than Agitator itself had even in base world. The skill itself didn't change, not even remotely, but the world around it changed in a way that made it far more effective to the point where the majority of proper endgame damage sets in Iceborne will at least stuff one rank of Agitator in there just because the benefit and uptime is that powerful. That said, I only consider this skill to be a little bit interesting, so while it is super effective, the lack of interestingness is what has left it down at the bottom of this list.
Number 4. Slinger capacity.
Now here we go into something I consider super interesting. First up, this skill was in base Monster Hunter World, but aside from literally Slinger only builds, it was just useless. The usage of Slinger ammo was limited, and therefore the skill itself was also super limited. But again, like Agitator, what happened in Iceborne? The Clutch Claw.
What a twist!
That's right, the Clutch Claw and a number of new weapon attacks focused around the idea of the Clutch Claw, which resulted in a number of weapons getting interesting new Slinger-based moves. From something as simple as a Slinger Burst following an attack that fires more like a shotgun blast of that Slinger type, which is genuinely useful and powerful with something like Thorn Pods or Piercing Pods, all the way up to massive weapon affecting mechanics or super strong attacks. Like Bow, for example, got Thousand Dragons, which unloads all of its Slinger ammo in one super powerful scatter shot with an arrow. It has different effects depending on ammo type, but you guessed it, Slinger capacity affects this shot and increases the damage. But something like that is just a pure damage increase, right? That's not that exciting. Well, how about Gun Lance as the best example in my opinion? The whole new mechanic of the weapon for Iceborne is the Wormstake Blast, which attaches to your target at whatever part you hit, and then replicates any explosive damage that lands near it. This attack functions because of mixing Slinger ammo with your ammo, and the main effect of this is the length that the Wormstake lasts for, with the amount of time affected both by the type of ammo that you use, and you guessed it, by the amount of ammo infused, which Slinger capacity of course affects, meaning Slinger capacity directly affects how often you have to do the maintenance attack with Gun Lance. It essentially acts as the equivalent of Power Prolonger, but for Gun Lance, and that is just one particularly potent example, as this skill affects every weapon in the game in one way or another, and often in very different ways between the weapons, and I just find the variety of results from one skill to be super cool and interesting. So Slinger capacity, feel free to enjoy your spot here at number 4.
Number 3.
Alright, let me explain something to y'all real quick. Ain't gonna be like you think. Cheddar already told y'all. Here.
Safe landing / provoker.
And it felt a little bit weird to pull these two skills apart, but this is where we get to the opposite side of the spectrum, where the skills themselves are only a little bit useful, but super interesting and unique, and, well, being brand new for Iceborne makes them rank even higher than that normally would for me. Both coming from Arena Earrings, they provide very different bonuses. Safe Landing changes your recovery animation after being hit by an attack with heavy knockback. Instead of sending you to the floor, where you can sit in invulnerability frames for a bit before standing up, you do a sweet backflip, and who doesn't like backflips? They're the best. As a result, this lowers your recovery time a fairly large amount, while also sending you a decent distance away from the monster, and it leaves your weapon unsheathed, which is a very interesting prospect for some builds. Provoker, on the other hand, just increases the attention that you get from a monster while attacking it, literally increasing the percentage chance that the monster will choose to hit you instead of other targets on the hunt. And this is just the big boy version of the food skill Feline Provoker, which has a smaller version of the same effect, but is also a food skill, and therefore a little bit less reliable on top of the not working as well part.
You have a gift.
This skill is great. It allows you to use very counter-focused builds more effectively in multiplayer, but it also gives you the room to be a proper tank if your build works for that too. I love both of these skills and their place within set building, with the only problem of course being that they are locked onto Arena Earrings as the only skills on their respective armor pieces, and of course not tying into any set bonuses. Unfortunately, this means that in order to have these skills work in the first place, you have to work particularly hard to include them. You have to purposefully build around them to make them work even slightly, and that really holds them back, especially with something like Saphi Armor. Imagine a Saphi Armor set bonus combination that also had Safe Landing, so you don't really have any forced sheath animations. It is supernatural synergy that we probably won't see in a properly effective build because, again, the skill is locked to a generally weak armor piece, especially in the Saphi-driven meta that we live in, where people are combining set bonuses like crazy. As a result, I think this drives down the general uses of these skills a pretty large amount, but it doesn't change the way that I feel about the skills themselves in a vacuum, which is why they've made it to my number 3 slot on this list.
Number 2.
Get off the fence!
Offensive guard.
And this is one of those totally new skills for Iceborne that is not only exciting and interesting, but also just an absolute game changer. Any well-timed guard with a shield, or strangely with greatsword is the only exception, triggers this skill worth up to a 15% attack bonus for a short period of time. Basically, any weapon with a shield is capable of keeping this near 100% uptime if you play around it, and that is the important wording here. If you play around it. This skill has the potential to change the entire playstyle of a weapon, or for some, game to accentuate the really cool nuances, like guard points on Charge Blade, which trigger this skill and give you even more incentive to mess around with arguably the highest skill ceiling part of Charge Blade in general. This also applies to Lance, where it not only triggers on well-timed shield placements in general, but also from a well-timed Clutch Claw counter. And honestly, the one thing that this skill doesn't apply to that I wish it did is Longsword. It works for Charge Blade guard points, and I get that because there is a shield involved, but if we are drawing the line at shields, then why can Greatsword do this and not Longsword?
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit.
I get that both logistically and balance-wise, this wouldn't work hugely in the current state of the game, but the weeb inside of me wants nothing more than EI counter slash to also give me an offensive buff. Not that it honestly needs it. Back on topic then, this skill is exciting, and it legitimately changes the way that you play certain weapons just by being part of your sets, and I love it. And the only reason that this skill is number 2 is which skill happens to be above it, and that is
Number 1.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently. That's okay.
Coalescence.
And this is the big one, the Mac Daddy of brand new Iceborne skills, at least in my opinion. Coalescence is simultaneously the most interesting and most gameplay affecting skill we currently have access to in our current build climate. A skill that enhances your attack, element attack, and status attack by a massive chunk for 90 seconds after you recover from a blight or abnormal status. This includes everything from catching fire for a moment to being stunned, which can happen with literally every single monster in the game. The bonuses it gives you are really quite fantastic when compared to other attack raising skills, and the 90 seconds that it lasts for is absolutely ridiculous in the grand scheme of hunts, especially when you consider that the top builds can kill monsters in 5 minutes, and therein lies the power of this skill. Even when you aren't purposefully triggering it, most hunters are bound to get stunned once in a while, if nothing else, and then after this you are basically superpowered for 1.5 minutes. It is crazy effective, and as a result, at least before the Safi'jiiva update, this skill was worming its way into more and more sets as just a bonus damage option because it is just that strong. But then we go over to how interesting it is on that side of things, and the answer is extremely. I mean, come on, we literally have a skill here that incentivizes lighting yourself on fire for a moment.
Oh, I made myself sad.
In order to increase your offense. A build that says, hey, go stand in that poison cup for a few seconds and then you'll be stronger. It's a skill that logistically within the Monster Hunter universe is just completely insane. Yet here it is. Here we are using it as hunters, and here it is being incredibly effective. It's hard to put it any other way than that for me. This is my favorite skill because it puts you in an incredibly unusual and often frowned upon situation on purpose in order to buff your damage. It's cool, it's unique, it's effective, it's interesting, it's perfect. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been my list of the top 5 skills in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Do you agree with my list? What skills do you think should be here instead? Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the kingdom and Amelia. Rage, Content, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.